Hello, and welcome to Nostalgia Marcana. I'm your host, Doug Leaf. Each episode of this podcast, we'll look back on the movies, TV, games, people, and phenomena that we still love talking about all these years later, and ask ourselves why these bits of pop culture still enchant us today. This week, we'll be revisiting...
Way. Your job's a joke, you broke, your love life's the old way. It's like you're always stuck in second gear, when it hasn't been your day, a week, a month, or even your year. But I'll be there for you when the rain starts to pour. I'll be there for you like I've been there before. I'll be there for you.
I've got my cup of coffee because today we are talking about Friends, the television phenomenon that ran from 1994 through 2004. I'm really excited to be talking about this. When I've talked to people about the show or people who have asked to come on the show, Friends has been cited as by far as the thing people want to talk about the most. So I'm really glad we're going to be finally doing it for our big 100th episode. So before we even get into talking about the show and everything else, I just want to say thank you for listening for 99 episodes now of this weird little experiment that I just decided to do for funsies. And I'm overjoyed that it has lasted this long and that you folks are still out there listening to it. And I'm really also very gratified by all of the wonderful friends I've made along the way. Not only having my own pre-existing friends come on the show and talk, but all of the cool friends I've made just across the internet verse. Just yakking on different podcasts and getting to know people. So I'm really glad to be reintroducing one of those new friends to you. He's been on our prior episodes on Calvin and Hobbes and Dazed and Confused, and I've had the pleasure of moonlighting on a couple of his shows as well. So please welcome back Case Aiken.
Well, just call me Fun Bobby because I'm drinking a glass of wine for this conversation.
Fun Bobby. No, and if you don't know anything about Friends, this will all be meaningless and pointless. But I do want to talk about some of these fun side characters. We're going to get into like the 6 main characters, and I think we'll spend some time on these people that sort of come into their orbit here and there. Case, before we even get talking about Friends, tell the good folks in internet land about the podcast you do.
Yeah, so the nutshell version is I host 2 podcasts, both part of the Certain POV podcast network. And so that is Another Pass, which is a movie analysis show where we talk about movies that we find fascinating but flawed, and then every 5 episodes talk about a movie that had a bunch of behind-the-scenes issues that they were able to overcome as sort of a history lesson / proof of concept for the rest of the show. And so that's a really fun one that you were on talking about Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And then I have Men of Steel, which is a Superman and Superman adjacent show where we explore the power fantasy of being Superman and why that's actually like really fun and uplifting and really fun ways. And you were on, and we were actually talking about Watchmen, and which is like the ultimate deconstruction of that power fantasy right there, where you show that the most powerful character is the one who is the most trapped by his circumstances. And yeah, so that's the kind of stuff I do. You can find that wherever you get podcasts, or also on YouTube at the Certain POV Media YouTube channel, where I also do videos on Superman analogs, characters who are like Superman that I like to just give like a 5-minute explainer of why I think they're cool. Yeah, so those are the things I work on.
That's awesome. And it's just so our listeners know, although Case is going to be the primary guest on this episode, I reached out to all the folks who have been on previous episodes, and anybody who felt like they had something to say about Friends will be, in true sitcom fashion, dropping by in audio form. So you'll be hearing just a few little takes here and there throughout this episode from some past guests on what Friends means to them, and or clever anecdotes or whatever it is they want to share. You'll be hearing from them too. So with that, let's start this the way we always do. Case, tell me about your nostalgic memories of Friends and why you wanted to come on and talk about this today.
Well, so I grew up in a Friends household. Like my family was really into like the NBC like Thursday night block, and so we watched that regularly. Like, and I was just the right age that when it started in syndication while the show was still running, it was a show that I would actively want to watch. Like I remember it being on like Fox 5 in the DC area and like running like 5 nights a week at that point. And we were probably only season 3 or 4 in like the actual run of the show at that point. So it like Friends was like a juggernaut of the zeitgeist. And I just remember being very much like a fan of it. Like it was popular for a reason. I know it's trendy to kind of like hate on it sometimes, and I understand that it is not the most original sitcom unto itself. That there are sitcoms that came before and sitcoms that have come after that have the same basic structure, but I think it's a really well executed one that I think has a lot of merit. And when it had its like revival, when it like first hit Netflix, I had a short-lived like blog series where I was comparing episodes of Friends to episodes of How I Met Your Mother, which I consider sort of a spiritual successor in terms of that basic structure of like, here's a group of, friends hanging out and and like their misadventures kind of scenario, where it's a bit more of an ensemble cast kind of scenario. And I did that for about the first 2 seasons of it, and like really got into sort of the meta of the nature of Friends at that point. Before that was about when I moved, and I just sort of like lost steam on producing it because it wasn't like it. Like I don't know if anyone actually like read it. I just was like producing this like blog for like a year. So yeah, so those are like the big areas where I've like really like dived into it, like, which is just my childhood and the fact that it was ubiquitous growing up, and that it was something that I actually shared with my parents, and like just was just common knowledge to be a thing that was popular that you could talk about, like you could make references to it, much like The Simpsons, but for a bit more of a bridge to the adults in my life, in a way that The Simpsons was not. And then, like I said, like through more of a deeper analysis that occurred later in my life.
I mean, for me, this was, of course, must-see TV, as NBC was wont to call it. I think, this is, I think, probably my third favorite of that era. I think, Seinfeld kind of dominated in terms of, even more so than Friends did. And I think probably a little stronger because of its mean streak and its weirdness. And I have a very soft spot for Frasier, which I love a whole bunch. I think it's much wittier than Friends is, but Friends is kind of like, if Seinfeld is like the courage and Frasier's brains, then Friends is heart.
Yeah.
And I remember when it first started to gain traction, there was a kid who I was doing theater with in high school. He was a little older than me, a couple of years older. And I remember he was the one who first started telling me, like, hey, are you watching this? And he was really funny. Who's this other theater kid, like I said, doing plays with. And I don't know if his mannerisms were Chandler-esque before he started watching the show, but by golly, the way he would just deliver funny lines became very kind of Matthew Perry-ish. And, maybe just because that's the way kids do. They imitate what they think is cool. But he was one of the funniest people I knew at the time. And so that made an impression on me. And I started watching the show, and I immediately gravitated towards it. I got what made it tick. Some other sort of very loosely related things is, so I went to high school with Matthew Perry's, is it stepsister? Let's see. His mom married Keith Morrison, and this was Keith Morrison's daughter. Went to high school with me, and we did plays together. She was in the cast, and for one of the shows that we put on, he came and saw it. And like, I didn't get a chance to talk to him or anything. I wish it was a cooler story. But I kind of saw him from a distance and was like, oh yeah, that's right. Her half brother is like on the most popular show on earth.
Yeah, that's very cool.
There he is. It was cool that he was there, showing support for his sister. That was nice. And I think this was during one of the times, yes, the show had already become a juggernaut, but I don't think he was in the throes of addiction at this point. A little bittersweet, obviously, that he is no longer with us. And I do want to talk a little bit about that HBO special they did a couple of years ago to get everybody back together. But I just, you talked about this show being imitated, and boy, was it imitated. You got like things that went nowhere, like Coupling, those kinds of shows. And then you got, How I Met Your Mother, which is fairly similar. But there's something about these 6 people both as actors and as characters, that they have a very clear and special chemistry with each other. So much so that like you couldn't just all these people. I don't know. Let's get like 5-6 people, and it's they're friends and they hang out and it'll be a show. It's like it ends up not working because like it's that cast of those people and their unique chemistry together that I think people gravitated towards.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly was a very successful grouping of it. And I think that one of the interesting elements of the show is that by virtue of them going for it, an even playing field for this ensemble cast, like the original idea was that my understanding is that Ross and Rachel were supposed to be the two main characters of the show, and this was their ensemble of friends around them. But the infamous the cast fighting to have like a uniform salary among them sort of encouraged the writers to really treat this as a true ensemble. And you can see that as the show runs, the emphasis characters shifts around. Arguably, Chandler and Rachel become the two main characters in the show at a certain point. I remember seeing there was like a web aggregator that like would visually represent the number of scenes that any given friend was in with whatever pairing you selected. And like basically if you put if you put Chandler and Rachel in there, you had like 90-ish% of all of the scenes of the show. Like one of them was involved in something going on there, or some like absurdly high percentage of it. Versus a show like How I Met Your Mother, where it like continues by virtue of like the structure of like the narrator character to remain like with a singular viewpoint. Or most other shows, like even if it is like fairly ensemble driven, there is a nominal viewpoint character. And like you could argue that Friends like during certain plots would become more important, and so like Joey might be more important in like a certain season than another. But that equilateral sort of perspective on these characters allowed for them to truly have this as a group with no like main focus. And that's interesting. It's different from a lot of shows.
Yeah, even like Seinfeld, which is ostensibly, of course, classically the show about nothing. And Seinfeld does a good job of balancing its four main characters and making sure all of them have a plot of substance in each episode, but you still kind of feel like, well, Jerry's still kind of the leader because he's more even keeled than the other three, and kind of a little more, a little more wise than them. They seem to be a little more like it's three crazy people and him.
Right. Well, and that's a foursome, and foursomes are very common in TV shows. But like when you get into a sixsome, like it is very difficult to have even space for all six characters. Like a foursome, it's very easy to have like, you might have one character who's a slightly smaller role in this episode, but like the general airtime is going to be relatively balanced out. And that's why you end up with like shows like Golden Girls, like where they're infamously famous because you strike it's so easy to write such a strong balance of four characters. When you get to six, it is difficult not to like make one the main character. And like what is interesting is that Friends didn't do that.
Well, as you said, that even got into their kind of famous contract negotiations where it was in those last few seasons, it was unclear, like, is this going to be the last season? Because they were demanding more money, but they were also demanding it I think at the time people thought like, geez, this is crazy that they're demanding so much and that they're all kind of standing in solidarity with each other. And then looking back on it, you kind of go like, well, one, you can't have a show where one of them like you have to have all six. Like it doesn't work if one of them goes, and you couldn't justify like, technically was maybe Jennifer Aniston a bigger star to some degree than the others? Possibly. Could she have commanded more? Yes. But then that would have like driven everybody else on the show insane. It's like, why are you paying Jennifer more? She's one of the six. We're all equal in this. And it ended up working out that they were able to do that to leverage a very large amount of money out of NBC through the end.
Right. And she certainly wasn't the biggest star at the beginning. And that's the other part that is interesting because like they have had their stars all rise and fall at various points over the course of the show. And like going into it, like I would argue Courtney Cox is probably the biggest star.
In by leaps and bounds. She was the only one I knew because she was the lead female in Ace Ventura.
Right.
But that was, I assume, shot, before she'd ever booked Friends. And it just happened to be the biggest film or one of the biggest films of 1994. the summer before the show started.
Yeah,
So,
and like they all like had like swings at like bigger stardom and like have had, you know, as much stardom as they necessarily need. It's not like they're owed anything beyond the run of the show. But like they've all like had like successful projects since the show in some way or another. Plus they're infinitely wealthy from doing this one production for 10 years.
Oh, I mean, like I said, by the end of it, they were getting, I think, $1 million an episode each, and there's 24-ish episodes per season. So the math worked out just fine in their favor, and to greater and lesser extent, they had success after the show. But we're going to take a quick interlude to hear from one of our newest friends, Randy Elaine from the Media Lit podcast, who you most recently heard on our episode on The Land Before Time. Take it away, Randy.
Hello, this is Randy Elaine from the Media Lit podcast, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about my relationship with the television show Friends. Now, this was an absolute phenomenon throughout the entire time I was in middle school, high school, and the very beginning of my time in college. And I honestly missed it. I really wasn't a big TV guy at the time, and I think I had a little bit of that uptight, pretentious sort of tendency to think that Friends is popular, so it couldn't possibly be cool. However, near the end of college, I met my future wife, and Friends was one of her favorite pieces of media in the entire world. During the early days of our relationship, we worked through every single episode on DVD, and it's really never left our lives. To have that many episodes of something that so many people understand is honestly like a second language when it comes to not only my personal relationship with my wife, but also to all sorts of friendships that we've developed over the years. I'm someone who loves to quote things, and Friends is something that you can quote freely with people of a certain age, and folks are going to know what you were talking about. If I'm up late at night and I throw the television on in the background, Friends is playing all night. And certainly we should acknowledge that not every take or perspective on Friends has aged really well. There's an unfortunate streak of really homophobic sort of humor at work at times. But there's also just so much cleverness. You've got a character like Phoebe, who is always willing to call her friends out for their own selfishness, and some genuinely fun things. The moment when Chandler has to lock himself inside of a box is a form of penance and apology to Joey, whilst explaining this very strange and unusual punishment to his friends. It's a beautiful thing. I also think back to a time my sister actually bought me a subscription to TV Guide in the name of Miss Chanandler Bong as an ode to a Friends episode. So I love the fact that Friends is always there. I love the fact that it's comfort food. And I even love the fact that, we can challenge some of the jokes that haven't aged so well over time. But at the end of the day, this show set a formula that all sorts of different television programs have wished that they could capture. And that magic is something special, and the fact that it lives on and people can still care about it this many years later is something that's going to be tough for anyone to ever repeat.
So I thought what we would do to kind of give this some shape, TV shows are different than movies. We're not going to recap 240 some odd episodes television.
No, we need to be clear that like no matter how well prepared we are for this conversation, we are going to miss something that someone cares about with this show. Even if you're not a Friends fan, there's something in the zeitgeist that you are thinking that we're going to talk about that we're going to miss because there's 10 seasons of the show. Like there's so much to talk about that we are just going to completely just like miss a bunch of stuff. And hopefully we're getting like a good sampling that is at least like representative of a good chunk of the show. But yeah, disclaimer for anyone who thinks that we're going to be comprehensive. Like, that's just not possible.
No, I mean, as with any episode of Nostalgia Arcanum that focuses on a TV show, we're doing a survey course. But I promise you, if you want the deep dive on every individual episode, I haven't looked, but I guarantee you somebody's done an episode by episode breakdown podcast of Friends. So go listen to that. If you want 240 some odd hours of podcasting to enjoy, go with God. But we're not doing that tonight. What I thought we would do is at least start by kind of talking about each of the 6 characters, and then kind of expanding that out to, we watched a handful of episodes as kind of just a springboard to talk about these things. And so we may talk about minor characters, those particular episodes, long running plot lines, kind of everything that kind of gives you a sense of the shape of the show from beginning to end. So with that, I figured we would start with the character that is probably, to me, if you had to pick one of them as the main character, and I know we just talked about why that isn't really the case, but I think the show kind of starts with Rachel, and she is the focal point for a lot of stuff. So I figured let's start with Rachel Green.
So you want to tell us now, or are we waiting for 4 wet bridesmaids?
Oh, God. Well, it started about a half hour before the wedding. I was in this room where we were keeping all the presents, and I was looking at this gravy boat, this really gorgeous Limoges gravy boat, when all of a sudden, sweet and low, I realized that I was more turned on by this gravy boat than by Barry. And then I got really freaked out, and that's when it hit me how much Barry looks like Mr. Potato Head. I always knew he looked familiar, but... Anyway, I just had to get out of there, and I started wondering, why am I doing this, and who am I doing this for? So anyway, I just didn't know where to go, and I know that you and I have kind of drifted apart, but you're the only person I knew who lived here in the city.
Who wasn't invited to the wedding?
Oh, I was kind of hoping that wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, so obviously this is Jennifer Aniston, who is a megastar well past the existence of this TV show, for a whole host of reasons, and part of that is that tabloids love her, and just like want to speculate about who she's in relationships with now.
And she was with Brad Pitt for a long time. She courted that.
Yeah. I was trying not to like directly say that, because like she would have been a star regardless of that, but that certainly like helped springboard the amount of attention she was getting in the media. So like, what can we say about this person? Like, there was the Rachel, like, for Christ's sake, like this was a fashion icon of a character in a show that wasn't like, they all had their styles, and like they were generally speaking fashionable individuals, but it wasn't like a show about fashion. It wasn't like, you know how like the OC was like notorious for like its soundtrack and its cool music scene kind of thing. Like Friends wasn't like, a lot about fashion, even though there were a lot of like fashion plots going on with the characters. Like it wasn't like, ooh, tune into Friends to see the most cutting edge looks, in a way that like maybe like Gossip Girl would have going for it.
No, not at all. But her career arc, she starts the show having no job, no skills, no nothing, because she's basically been born and bred to be somebody's wife.
Right.
And the show begins with her breaking out of that by the very first episode. She leaves her intended at the altar, Barry, and goes to find her childhood friend, Monica Geller, and where she reconnects with her Ross, who she knew again from youth. And then they retcon this later that she also knew Chandler because he was Ross's roommate in college, that somehow they had met when they were younger. But this is kind of the jumping off point.
I will say I could believe that retcon actually works for me, because like I've had that situation. In fact, my cousin's wife, I apparently knew by virtue of the fact that I knew the guy she was dating before that. I just never at any point processed that they were the same person until a mutual friend of ours was in the room with us and like was like, oh, like went up and hugged her, and it was like, oh my God, it's like we hung out so many times, and just like didn't process that this was the same person. So like I buy that retcon there.
Yeah, but her arc throughout the series, if to the extent that these characters have a series long arc, is one of self-actualization, right? She has to learn to. She first gets a crummy job at Central Perk at the coffee shop where they all hang out, which eventually graduates into a career in the fashion industry.
Right, which like the interesting part of the early season arc for her is learning to live on her own with like the lack of means that being just a waitress in New York have. Like I did that life, and like it, like you're able to function, but it is a grind. And to see her sort of explore an area that they had established pretty early on is an interest for her, naturally is like a pretty good arc. It's a logical arc for this character. It makes sense that she's going to continue in this general direction in a way that, like, sometimes there are pivots in careers that just don't make sense. And this
I'm sorry, there's a what?
Pivots.
It was too low-hanging fruit for me not to say something.
But you know, with a sitcom that runs for 10 seasons, it's very possible. And in fact, like, I would say that this show has some of that, like, you know, cruft that sort of builds up when you're running for a really long time and trying to keep things fresh. But I would say that Rachel's arc over the course of it makes a good amount of sense. Maybe her relationship stuff, some of that gets kind of forced later on, but like, she makes sense overall in terms of like who she is.
Yeah, she starts out the show so naive, but by the end of it, she's very much like, I'm capable. You know, I kind of know what's what and what I deserve in life. You know, and so to watch that character kind of go from being weak to strong is really gratifying, I think, throughout the show. You kind of forget that, like, because she's so cast as like the hot one, she is very capable and funny, and, you know, can do all the things the other characters and cast members do very well. And so, like, you watch her break out of that mold plenty.
Do you want me to quit?
What? What would make you think that?
Well, all of those things that you said in the interview, I mean, if you believe any of them, I must not be a very good assistant. You know what? I am just going to pack up my desk, and I will be gone by the end of the day. Well, I guess there's no use me sticking around till the end of the day.
Wait. You can put your sad little muffin back in its drawer. You must know the truth. I didn't want to lose a perfectly good assistant.
What?
That's why I said all those things about your flirting and your drinking.
My drinking?
No, I must have said that after you left.
Said what exactly?
That you enjoyed the occasional drink. Binge.
Oh my God! Oh, that is it! I'm leaving. You are just a horrible person.
No, wait. Now, if you're gonna get all sensitive about it, I don't want to lose you. What if I create a position for you? I'll make you assistant buyer in this department.
Say more things like that.
You can have your own office and a raise, effective tomorrow.
I need an expense account.
Done.
And an assistant.
Sophie, get in here.
But it's so funny to see this, like, in some ways the show's constantly telling you, like, yeah, you know, Rachel, she's hot.
Yeah, it's so, like, funny,
well,
also.
She is, but she's more than that.
Yeah, it's so funny, though, when you consider the fact that she's sharing the stage with Courtney Cox and
yeah, those
Lisa
Uggos,
Kudrow.
Courtney Cox
Yeah.
and Lisa Kudrow, yeah.
Like, it's just wild on that one, but it is true. I mean, like, what was that, the Rolling Stones cover where she appeared and she's like, she's got the Rachel hair and, like, she's like nude, but, like, it's like kind of blurred and you can just like kind of see her butt.
I was gonna say, was that the era of Rolling Stone where everyone was just every female was on the cover just nude holding their boobs? Like, that was the
it was like one of those cover. Yeah, like
yeah.
And that I just remembered, like, that was like one of, like, the definitive moments for me as a teenage boy. Like, that was a big thing, like a big marketing push for the character.
But before we go any further, I want to introduce another friend of the podcast. He's been on before, talking about the Uncharted video game franchise, Muppets Treasure Island, and most recently, Three Ninjas. He's the host of the Still Loading podcast. Please welcome to the show again, Josh Covell.
Oh, man. Friends. I have a few memories of the TV show, the television show Friends. I didn't watch it really when it was contemporary, actually. I kind of got into it more when it was on one of the streaming platforms. I think it was like Netflix, but I still have memories of this show when I was a kid. Most of it actually just revolved around the people, or most of it was just the people around me. So the first time I remember hearing about it was, I think a bunch of kids in my school liked it. And I remember distinctly in my yearbook that, there was a whole thing, where all the students would vote on their favorite movie and favorite show and favorite artist, favorite genre of music, like what the most popular of whatever type of media or whatnot it was. Friends won the TV show. And I remember being a little salty about it at the time because I'm like, man, that's not a cartoon. I don't even remember what I would have like voted for. I want to say, did I put like Hey Arnold down? I don't fucking know. It was something like that. I just remember being kind of salty about it. Like, what do you mean Friends? Who was watching Friends? And the weird thing is though, is that this was in like maybe 7th or 8th grade. And I'm thinking 7th or 8th grade is a little young to like understand the humor of Friends. I feel like, not saying that kids couldn't watch it, but it felt more like to me like this is the popular show, so everyone wanted to watch the popular show. That's how at least my vibe of it back when I was a kid. I also remember when I told my parents about it, I asked them like, what's this show Friends? It was voted the most popular thing. I don't remember if this happened before the yearbook or after the yearbook, mind you, but I do remember asking them about the TV show, and they were like, it's pretty funny, but it's not really, it's not a good show at the same time. It's not wholesome. I don't know if I've said it before on Nostalgia Arcanum here, but my parents are pretty religious, and so they heavily monitored what I watched as a kid. And I think they even told me about how, Ross, the first episode, I didn't realize, I'm going to go all over the place, but they told me about how Ross's ex-wife had a kid and then divorced, Ross's ex-wife was pregnant. I'm forgetting the whole thing, but you know how his ex-wife ends up being gay and marries another woman, and they have Ross's kid, and he has to kind of work out the custody situation and all that stuff. And my parents, growing up super conservative and religious, were like, oh, they weren't ever really outwardly like mean about it or like really aggressive about it, but I could tell it made them uncomfortable in retrospect. And so when I heard about that, and I was like, oh, okay, I understand, that was before I kind of changed my opinions. But then when I watched it and saw in like the first episode they cover all of that, I'm like, oh, so my parents only watched the first episode, I think, and were like, nah, and just moved on. So those were my earliest memories of the show, of Friends. And then I ended up watching it on a streaming service, I forget which. Watched the whole show all the way through, really enjoyed it. I wouldn't say I'm one of those diehard fans, but I enjoyed it well enough. I like sitcoms just for the vibes alone, like the pleasant, happy-go-lucky vibes, and Friends definitely did that for me when I was watching it, like all the way through. Like I think it was after college even, so this was like early 2010s, I want to say, something like that. That I watched it all the way through for the first time in earnest, excuse me. So yeah, Friends, man, I do enjoy the show. I actually tried to start rewatching a couple years ago, but I got rid of Max because for various reasons, and so I had to find other ways to watch it, totally legal ways to watch it, and it just wasn't working out. But yeah, enjoy the show. It's nostalgic for me, mainly due to the fact that it was something that was popular around the time I was growing up. So yeah, that's what I got.
Well, and also because she is, at least they started the show, it was something they would hit a lot with, was the will they, won't they with Ross. So I think that'd be the next character to talk about is Ross Geller, who is the older brother of Rachel's childhood friend, Monica, who has had a crush on her since, I guess, at least since she was in high school and he was maybe in college at that point. They don't exactly make clear when this started, but obviously this has been going on for a long time. And like of the TV, will they, won't they kind of things, this is often cited as one of the best. I think it's good. I don't know if it's the best, but man, they get so much mileage out of this, and they interestingly choose to like drop it at a certain point. They're like, okay, we've hit this pretty hard for a few seasons. They're broken up now. Let's just leave it alone. And then every so often they'll kind of go like, well, maybe we'll bring this back up again,
right.
and until the finale.
Rach, I got a message from you. Who's Michael?
Oh my God. Oh my God, Ross, no, hang up the phone. Give me the phone, Ross. Give me the phone. Give me the phone. Give me the phone.
You're over me?
Oh God.
What? You're
Oh God.
You're over me?
Oh God.
When were you under me? Rachel, do you? I mean, were you,
Okay.
what?
Okay. Well, basically, lately I've sort of had feelings for you.
You've had feelings for me.
Yeah, what so? You had feelings for me first.
Whoa. Huh. You know about I had, you know?
Chandler told me.
Chandler, when did he?
When you were in China,
China.
meeting Julie.
Julie, that's, oh, God. Julie, right. Okay, I need to lie down. No, I'm gonna stand. And I'm gonna walk. I'm walking, and I am standing. Okay, so you, and now what, and now you're over me?
Are you over me?
Yeah, Ross and by extension Monica, like the two of them are the nexus for like this friend group as a whole, and it's like by virtue of them being siblings that like everyone like kind of comes together. Which is why I generally would consider like Ross and Rachel like the main pairing of the beginning of the show, with Monica kind of as like a deuteragonist to go along with it, and he is very much supposed to be the audience surrogate early on in the show, and he becomes somewhat flanderized once they decide to like go away from his relationship with Rachel, because they come up with like, oh, his thing is that he keeps on having marriages and getting divorced, and like he becomes much more of like an out there character. Like I completely forgot about his rage problem issue that pops up in like season 5 and 6 until we were rewatching a bunch of these episodes, and it's like, oh right, because like you have to sort of invent stuff for this character, because early on he's supposed to be this charming kind of like professor guy, and then they lean into like, but what if that's boring, and like what if this guy's boring, and what if he's like kind of like a joke of the group. Like he starts off as the leading man and kind of becomes the clown for a duration of the show, which is sort of this wild pivot that
thank you
that the characters are allowed to do in this show by virtue of not having any one set sort of like protagonist character.
Well, his deal becomes, first of all, they start with him like, well, he's a little more fussy, he's a little more intellectual than the group because he is a scientist by trade. He's a paleontologist, which we find out he basically decided to do on a dare. I don't know, I guess I'll be a paleontologist. Who gives a fuck? Kind of thing. And then they sort of morph him, as you said, once they the Ross and Rachel thing runs out of steam a little bit. They just have them, they're like, well, they've been together for too long. We have to crowbar a reason in there for them to fall apart, and then they try to get him back together again with when they bring in Emily for him to marry, and she becomes the reason that falls apart. And so over the course that you said, right, he develops a little bit of he becomes a little more Donald Duckish over time, where he'll like lose his composure, which I guess if I'd been through that many divorces, I'd probably be a little touchy. And forced to hang out with my ex all the time.
They weren't all divorces. Some of them were annulments.
Okay, excuse me. If I had that many relationships that sputtered out for whatever reason, I might be a little touchy. But they also get into this idea of like, well, he thinks he's smart. He's like book smart, but otherwise like not quite as smart as he thinks he is. Which we've been joking about it already. But the pivot sequence from that episode.
I just don't think it's gonna fit.
Oh, yeah, well, come on, up. Yes. Oh, here we go. Pivot. 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 Pivot.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
Okay, I don't think it's gonna pivot anymore.
You think?
All right, let's bring it back down and try again. Okay. Oh.
Okay, yeah, I think it's really stuck now.
I can't believe that didn't work.
I know, me neither. I mean, you had a sketch.
Oh, you know what? What did you mean when you said pivot?
Which is about them, like it's so funny this thing kind of took on a life of its own, because it's just Ross buys a couch. He doesn't want to pay the delivery fee because the furniture store is only 3 blocks from the apartment, but then that means they have to get this thing up and around this staircase themselves, which results in a comedy of errors with Ross trying to be more supervisory and just shouting pivot at Chandler and Rachel as they try to move this thing. And like the joke obviously is not that the word pivot is funny. It's just that, Mr. Bossy Pants is failing at being Mr. Bossy Pants.
Yeah, it's all the delivery, which is a lot of the jokes in the show in general, like where they're like basic cookie cutter, like what you would write for the scene, and then like really well executed lines from just about everyone in the cast. And this is one of those examples where like just saying the word pivot over and over again by itself wouldn't be that funny, but it is so well delivered, and then the actual punchline of the end of the episode is the couch is like completely split in two because he got it so wedged into the stairwell that it just couldn't be taken out without being like completely cut.
Yeah, you mentioned that. I was noticing that about the writing as well, which is, some of the stuff doesn't seem funny on paper, or if you've only seen one episode, it's like, okay, I guess. But when you've watched like 5 seasons and this character inside and out, you get that like class, that's so Ross, or whatever, which character you pick, because they know how to deliver it in a way that is intrinsic to this character that they've inhabited so much and that you've spent so much time with, that they start to work as inside jokes, right, which is a different kind of wavelength. But the writers know how to write for these characters, but especially by that point, which is like season 5, they rely on all of these actors to figure out a way to deliver this stuff in a way that makes it funnier because of that familiarity.
Yeah, I mean, almost all the episodes that we looked at for this conversation rely on familiarity with the characters, aside from like the pilot, frankly, because that's the only one where they have to introduce everything. Like the memorable episodes are memorable because of them drawing on the deeper lore of the characters and our relation, like really our parasocial relationship with them. Like I had this epiphany on this set of watching of the show, and that you could make a comparison with reality TV. Like there is a similar space in terms of what people are looking for entertainment to like The Real World or like Summer House, like shows that are about like groups of friends nominally hanging out together in like some sort of situation where like they're just around each other. And that's sort of why this show has sort of a casual vibe that like we reference like Frasier and Seinfeld, like those lack. Like this is about like just vibing with your friends, which is right, a space that people want to inhabit. That's why, like, again, like reality shows in that space have been popular. That's why people enjoy podcasting, Twitch streaming, etc. They want to have relationships with people. And a show like Friends is very much about like, yeah, we're just gonna like explore 10 years with like this cast of characters here, and they're very well like personified by the actors in it. And David Schwimmer as Ross like does a great job in terms of making that shift of being this like lead character, where it's all about this will they, won't they, and then he kind of becomes the jester for a little bit, and then is able to circle around and still be the emotional anchor by the time we get to the finale.
Ross, hi. It's me. I just got back on the plane, and I just feel awful. That is so not how I wanted things to end with us. It's just that I wasn't expecting to see you, and all of a sudden you're there and saying these things, and now I'm just sitting here and thinking of all the stuff I should have said and I didn't. I mean, I didn't even get to tell you that I love you too. Because of course I do. I love you. I love you. I love you. What am I doing? I love you. I've got to see you. I've got to get off this plane.
Oh my God.
Excuse me.
Please sit down.
No, I'm sorry, but I need to get off the plane, okay? I need to just tell someone that I love them.
Miss, I can't let you off the plane.
Let her off the plane!
I am afraid you are going to have to take your seat.
Oh, please, miss, you don't understand.
Try to understand!
Oh, come on, miss, isn't there any way that you can just let me off the...
No! No! Oh my God. Did she get off the plane? Did she get off the plane?
I got off the plane.
She got off the plane.
I do love you.
I love you too, and I am never letting you go again.
Okay, because this is where I want to be. Okay, no more messing around. I don't want to mess this up again.
No, me neither, okay? We're done being stupid.
Okay. It's you and me, all right? This is it.
This is it. Unless we're on a break. Don't make jokes now.
Right, which of course finally reunites the two of them after they've already had one kid together. Pulling their because Emma is his daughter, right? If I remember correctly.
I
Rachel's?
think so. We didn't actually look at those episodes. Again, there was no way for us to review all 10 seasons of the show.
Right. And he's the only one up until, I guess, Rachel has that kid. Is that he's the only one with a kid. We see Ben from time to time, his son.
Yeah, I mean, like, Phoebe eventually has, like, the kid with her brother, which is a weird statement to say out loud, but...
Surrogate. She's a surrogate
yes.
for her brother. Yeah. They get a lot of mileage out of that particular sentence construction. Through that plot line. But she's not actually, she doesn't consider herself a parent to those kids.
Right. It was there because Lisa Kudrow was pregnant, right? So.
Right. It was an excuse to hide that. So yeah, this is probably a good chance to start moving on to some of the other characters. So we kind of talked about Monica a bunch because she is the joint that connects Rachel and Ross. Before we get to talking about Ross Geller's little sister, we have another visitor come into the studio. She's my little sister. She was our very first guest all the way back on our episode about the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror specials. She's also been on many episodes since, including, just to name a few, Gargoyles and Animaniacs. Welcome back, my sister, Amy Baum.
So I started watching Friends probably somewhere midway through season 1. It's the first sitcom I remember watching that wasn't necessarily family friendly. around the time the show that I was pretty much my favorite, Full House, was kind of going out the door around the time Friends was starting. So I was sort of just, transitioning to, I guess, more adult content. And yeah, it was always just fun. I think everybody watched the show, so there was always something to laugh about with someone, whether it was Phoebe's silly songs or, Ross and Rachel getting drunk and eloping in Vegas. And yeah, that pretty much continued, especially in college. What was the best is my whole sorority pretty much watched the show, and we would often have our sisterhood events on Thursday night so that we could, watch Friends at somebody else's apartment, while we were having these sisterhood events. And that was just something I always enjoyed. It was just like watching the show with a whole group of people that enjoyed the show. And that also extended even beyond college. When I went to London for a few months after I graduated, there was not a lot of TV options. So my flatmates and I rented VHS tapes from the Woolsworth around the corner from our flat, and we would watch that because that was just something we all enjoyed. And yes, that did include the London episodes, and yes, we did go around saying London, baby. And yeah, it's just something that is so timeless. Like I still, watch the reruns. At this point, yeah, it's something I'd probably just have on in the background because I know the episodes so well and I've seen them so many times. And it's also something that, we can, fall asleep to. So it is something that's still very much a part of my life. And I always just enjoyed the humor and the characters. Yeah, I always just loved, how silly Phoebe was. I could always relate to Monica in a way just because, she was kind of the dorky one. I was kind of a bit of a dork growing up, and I kind of related to her just kind of wanting to be noticed and accepted in her own right. Because she obviously struggled with being overshadowed by an older brother. That, obviously in her situation, her parents blatantly favored her brother. So of course, she wanted to have, be accepted in her own right. She always struggled with being the fat kid growing up. So, she always wanted to, have that acceptance. And that was one of the reasons I was so happy for her and Chandler when they eventually got together and got married and had their own happiness. And yeah, I was, and then of course with Ross and Rachel, rooting, for them when they were younger, following that storyline. And yes, Rachel, I'm sorry you guys were on a break, have to say it. But yeah, Friends was just a huge part of my adolescence and adulthood, and still is.
And she kind of has two deals, one of which is more important than the other. One is that she was fat when she was a kid, which they get some mileage of that is less important than her primary character trait, which is that she is very high-strung and competitive and everything that goes with that.
Yeah, and super into cleaning is a really big thing for the character.
She's an anal retentive.
Yeah.
To use a 90s sitcom term.
I can't believe you tried to move the green ottoman.
Thank God you didn't try to fan out the magazines. I mean, she'll scratch your eyes right out.
Guys, I am not that bad. Yeah, you are, Monica. Remember I lived with you? You were like a little,
That is so unfair.
Oh, come on. When we were kids, yours was the only Raggedy Ann doll that wasn't raggedy.
Okay, so I'm responsible, I'm organized, but hey, I can be a kook.
All right, you madcap gal. Try to imagine this. The phone bill arrives, but you don't pay it right away.
Why not?
Because you're a kook. Instead, you wait until they send you a notice.
I could do that.
Okay. Then you let me go grocery shopping, and I buy laundry detergent, but it's not the one with the easy pour spout.
Why would someone do that? One might wonder.
Someone's left a glass on the coffee table. There's no coaster. It's a cold drink. It's a hot day. Little beads of condensation are inching their way closer and closer to the surface of the wood.
Stop it! Oh, my God. It's true.
Which is interesting. I feel like by the later episodes, we kind of forget that she's supposed to be a chef, and that's like a huge part of her character in the early episodes, because like I just feel like the exacerbation of the high strung clean freak kind of component is directly at odds with like what you think of when you think of a chef who's like going to be working with food and have like, you know, like they might clean up afterwards, but like there's going to be a bit of a mess there while they're like playing around and like just like, you know, doing the art with the food.
Yeah, I mean, they do get some mileage out of her being a chef. There's, you know, like episodes where she's like cooking Thanksgiving for the group, for example, things like that. But she, like a lot of the characters, especially in the early goings, is struggling with her career. Mm-hmm. You know, your job's a joke, you're broke, right? I think they really wanted to explore this period of your 20s when you are, you know, very much like, okay, school's over, you got to figure out what to do with your life. How's that going to go? You're not going to start off, you know, making $1 bajillion a year. You're going to start at the bottom somewhere, whatever your chosen career path is. And she struggles a lot. Like she has to, I remember at one point she's working at this ridiculous 50s diner where she has to serve food on roller skates and wear these colossal fake boobs. And like, it's really, demeaning for her to do this. She can't wait to get out. And I think Jon Favreau comes in as this billionaire to try and, buy her.
Yeah.
But she's also, they kind of shift this over from like her general competitiveness and things in life to sort of her being the dominant over her boyfriend and then husband Chandler.
Yeah. Because like early on, like her dating life is one of the ones we're allowed to sort of explore because again, like Ross and Rachel are like marked as like the primary couple for the first 2 to 4 seasons. And then you get into like with like Phoebe and Joey being like specifically more like comic relief kind of characters. Their relationships are a little bit more like played for laughs. And so we see Monica like go through a bunch of like important relationships, and some are like small quick ones, and then other ones are like long lasting ones that, you know, take up like portions of the seasons. And it's an excuse for us to witness the relationships that the show wants to try to explore, but is somewhat limited by the fact that as the show gets bigger and the budgets for the main cast gets bigger, the space for guest stars becomes smaller, aside from like one-off guest stars. And so you end up becoming much more insular. Whereas early on, like Monica is a big way for us to like see the people outside of their immediate group and how they interact with them all.
Well, I think this would be an okay point. I know we were going to spend some time on side characters, but I think it's appropriate to talk about Richard here.
Yeah.
Played by Tom Selleck as a recurring guest star as her love interest for a good chunk of the early goings of the show, who is her father's friend. And they kind of this exploration of like, you know, the Electra complex shit of her basically dating her father,
right?
Through this guy.
I thought you just had one.
No. Henry's almost 2. And he's talking and everything. Here.
Oh.
You know, the other day he told me he liked me better than his other grandpa. Now, in all fairness, his other grandpa's a drunk, but still.
Oh, you're a grandpa.
Yeah? Are we nuts here?
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I'm dating a man whose pool I once peed in.
I didn't need to know that. I guess 21 years is a lot. I mean, hell, I'm a whole person who can drink older than you.
Yeah. So maybe we should just...
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe.
Wow. This really sucks.
Yeah, it sure does.
Yeah, because she wants to be seen. She wants to be, looked at. This makes her insecurities go away because an older, powerful guy is telling her she's awesome. That's kind of how I viewed it.
Yep. Yeah, no, like that whole dynamic, because I mean, it is still Tom Selleck, and like they have this whole point that all of the women in the show are like, oh my God, Richard is so sexy. Like, of course you would like it. This makes so much sense for everyone. But yeah, it's certainly a weird dynamic. Like they keep on like saying that like I'm a whole drinking person's older than you. Like it's weird. It's weird.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear from the outset that it's not going to last. It's the question of like, when is this ultimately going to fail? And but she gets pretty hurt throughout all of that. But she ultimately has to stop when she realizes, he doesn't want to have kids, and she does, and it's like, well, yeah, because she's 25, and he's at least double that,
right?
He's had kids there that are all grown up now, and so he doesn't want to start over. And it's kind of this great way to spotlight where you are in your 20s, where you're not everybody, but most likely you're going to be in a relationship that fails ultimately. It's not going to work out.
And I think that's a very real relationship. Like, while it's comically big age difference, like it's not so much so that like it's conceivable. It happens. It's but more likely you'll see one where it's like a 7-year or a 10-year age difference. Where like it's still big enough that you're at different points in your life. And like it's nice to see these relationships be depicted on screen with a certain amount of nuance.
Yeah, and it's a good contrast to Chandler when she ultimately begins that becomes her primary focus romantically, because he is about just about everything that Richard is not, and vice versa. He's not manly, he's not suave, he's goofy,
right,
but also loyal and would do anything for her. And it's a much better match. That the show, I don't know if when they first conceived these characters that they would ever end up together.
I don't think so. I before we pivot to Chandler, because I feel that's about to come. Before we pivot to Chandler, I do want to like throw one other thing that is one of Monica's things that it plays up more in the early seasons, where Monica and Ross is the son that can do no wrong to their parents, and that Monica, like no matter what she does, is something that like she's always gets in trouble, even if it's Ross's fault for something. And you knew about this line kind of thing. So I had that exact thing happen to me last year. And it was like such this is the exact scene from Friends that I have to share this, which is that like I had hidden from my parents for 21 years that I had a tattoo on my back. And when it finally came out at a dinner, the fact that my sister knew about it this entire time was more of the topic of conversation than anything else. And I felt so bad for her at that moment, because I was like, this is exactly the scene from fucking Friends.
Right. No matter what happens, the comedy game is Ross can do no wrong and she can do no right in her parents' eyes.
Don't listen to your mother. You're independent and you always have been. Even when you were a kid and you were chubby and you had no friends, you were just fine. And you would read alone in your room and your puzzles. Look, there are people like Ross who need to shoot for the stars, with his museum and his papers getting published. Other people are satisfied with staying where they are. I'm telling you, these are the people who never get cancer. And I read about these women trying to have it all, and I thank God our little harmonica doesn't seem to have that problem.
So, Ross, what's going on with you? Any stories? No news? No little anecdotes to share with the folks?
Okay. Look, I realize you guys have been wondering what exactly happened between Carol and me, and so, well, here's the deal. Carol's a lesbian. She's living with a woman named Susan. She's pregnant with my child. And she and Susan are going to raise the baby.
And you knew about this?
And, I had forgotten about that as being kind of an important component of her character, right? This inferiority complex to her brother. And again, they still talk to her like the weight thing that they'll kind of talk down to her about that, even though she's obviously very fit and slender. That now they treat her as if she still is overweight. And, like, it's awkward.
Yeah, I mean, the joke is like she's so waifish in reality. Like she's tiny. Like this whole cast, like they're tiny people.
Right. The other thing, actually, now that you're talking about the other thing about her character combined with Ross is sometimes they'll really play up the fact that they're siblings, and they do a good job of making that relationship, because it is the longest relationship between any of these characters on the show. Feels really lived in. There's that episode where they do, quote unquote, the routine. This big dance routine that they used to do together. There's like the gestures that there's like, so in addition to the middle finger that means fuck you, they have this thing where they put their hands behind their heads and clap their elbows together. That feels super authentic to me, as like, yeah, your sibling and you will have these like inside things that you do to each other. Very, very good lived in stuff.
Yeah. Or the flicking under the chin, that gesture there as well. Like But yeah, like even from the pilot, they're actually like very good about having body language of like a comforting like sibling relationship. Even in the opening credits, which we will have to talk about at some point on this call. But like there's like sequences where they're dancing and it feels very brother sisterly. Like they do a really good job of conveying that relationship between the two of them.
Yeah. So let's talk about Chandler a little bit. Chandler Bing, played by the late great Matthew Perry, really, much more than the other five, relied on as quote unquote the funny one. They give him all of these lines, and I was really impressed. My wife and I have been doing a rewatch for from the beginning. We started a few months ago, and I was just watching him going like, man, he is so effortlessly funny. They can give him almost anything to say, and he finds a way to kind of rejigger the delivery outside of what you would think you would say on the page, just by kind of modifying his cadence a little bit here and there. But he's also got this very like Gene Kelly kind of body movement. Like he's one of those guys that's kind of like Steve Martin. Like he's actually like funny from like the toes up, in terms of like how he moves around and stuff. Like it's actually, you would picture a lesser actor just kind of standing there and saying it, as opposed to the way he almost dances through scenes.
In some cases, literally. He's a very physical kind of actor who, I mean, he's the other breakout star of the show in terms of like when people talk about Friends, like they might make references to the other characters, but like generally speaking, people are talking about Chandler. Like that character is so iconic to the series and is so well delivered by Matthew Perry that there is considering the show runs for 10 years, and like I think that they have less steam in the later seasons than they do in the earlier ones. Like when people are also looking to make fun of Friends, they look to Chandler specifically for it, which is unfortunate, because he really is a great comedic talent, especially in the early chunk of the show when they're like finding their footing. Like his delivery is so perfect, while like some of the other actors are like warming into their characters, like that he really makes it like a show that like gets through its first couple seasons.
Do you like some gum?
Oh, is it sugarless?
Sorry, it's not.
Oh, then no thanks. What the hell was that? Mental note, if Jill Goodacre offers you gum, you take it. If she offers you mangled animal carcass, you take it. On second thought, gum would be perfection. Gum would be perfection? Gum would be perfection. Could have said gum would be nice. Could have said I'll have a stick, but no. For me, gum is perfection. I loathe myself. All right, okay. What next? Blow a bubble. A bubble's good. It's got a boyish charm. It's impish. Here we go. Nice going, imp. Okay, it's okay.
All I need to do is reach over and put it back in my mouth.
Good save. We're back on track, and I'm chewing someone else's gum. This is not my gum. Oh my God. Oh my God. And now you're choking.
Yeah, he locked into his character really quickly, and I think the writers locked into him in terms of what kind of things to give him. Where, again, all of these shows that tried to kind of copy it, it's like, well, you can kind of maybe get some of these characters or characters that are like them, but you're not going to find another one of him. You sort of have, like, for example, Neil Patrick Harris in How I Met Your Mother is kind of fills that role, but he doesn't have the warmth that Chandler has.
Yeah, he's explicitly, or rather, not explicitly.
He's the anti-Chandler in a way.
He's Chandler and Joey fused into one character.
Right, because he is the Lothario of the group in that show, right? In a way that Chandler obviously never is, which they get a lot of mileage out of. I know people who hate on the show like to talk about kind of the gay panic stuff with Chandler.
That's not that bad an episode. I
was gonna say, like, it's people act like that's the entire show, and like it's a very small percentage of like people mistaking him for that.
One, it's like the second or third episode, or I guess it's like the third episode of the show. Like it's super early on, and like we have to remember it's 1995, and like they're actually trying to treat it respectfully, and like the show opens with like a lesbian relationship disrupting the marriage that Ross is in, which is like. It has its own like sort of issues potentially, but is at least like trying to embrace it and like doesn't treat it as a bad thing. Like it just treats it as
all the time we spend with Carol and oh gosh, what's her name? Her partner. I can't think of Carol's partner. Off the top.
Blanking on it too, but moving on.
But they're portrayed as like regular, like sane people. They're not, the object of fun because they're lesbians. Right. They're. And so like, yeah, Chandler is not macho, I think is what they're seizing on, but they don't really play up gay stuff or anti-gay, jokes with him very much. Maybe a bit with his father, because he talks about his father being in these like cross-dressing reviews in Vegas.
That's
that kind
true.
of stuff.
Yeah. But also like not to be too much of an apologist, because I realize like, hey, like cis white guy, like trying to like defend a show that was like at least trying to normalize a lot of the stuff, like, but like trans stuff was an easier punchline in the 90s than gay stuff, and gay stuff was still a punchline in the 90s, and
it's also less that he's gay than he is like he's a stripper. I think that's the kicker, that he's on stage doing this kind of embarrassing shit, as opposed to just if it was like, oh yeah, my dad's gay, it wouldn't be anything. The show would probably treat it just like, oh, whatever, his dad turned out to be gay, no big deal. But like, because he is like in Vegas doing a review, that probably changes the calculus a little bit. Not to be a total apologist for it either, but I think I think after a while they get more mileage out of the fact that he is, like I said, taking his clothes off for the entertainment of others, than the fact that whatever his gender or sexual orientation.
Right. And also like his mom is also just as much a like source of the joke because she's an erotic novelist. Like,
right. She's a mess too. Morgan Fairchild, by the way.
Hey, she's on.
Nora Bing.
Before we get to the book, now what is this about you being arrested in London? What is that all about?
Your mom was arrested?
Shh. Busy beaming with pride.
Jay, this is kind of embarrassing, but occasionally after I've been intimate with a man.
Now, why would you say that's embarrassing?
I just get this craving for Kung Pao chicken.
That's too much information!
All right, so now you're doing this whole book tour thing. How is that going?
Oh, fine. I'm leaving for New York tomorrow, which I hate. But I get to see my son, who I love.
Oh! And this is the way that I find out. Most moms use the phone.
Don't take this wrong. I just don't see you as a mom somehow. I don't mean that bad.
Oh, no. I am a fabulous mom. I bought my son his first condoms.
And then he burst into flames.
Yeah. The other thing about Chandler I wanted to bring up is the ongoing joke that no one knows what he does for a living.
Right, yes.
Except that he works in an office somewhere and does things with data entry at one point. During the famous, one of the most famous episodes of the show, it's called The One with the Embryos, which, by the way, that's their naming convention. All the episodes are always called The One with the whatever. And so this episode culminates with a quiz where the Monica and Rachel are playing against Chandler and Joey for who knows more about the others, with Ross as quizmaster. And I believe the climactic question, like the tiebreaker, is what is Chandler Bing's job?
All right, gentlemen, you're up first. Okay. You have 30 seconds. The lightning round begins. Stop it. Now, what was Monica's nickname when she was a field hockey goalie?
Big fat goalie.
Correct. Rachel claims this is her favorite movie.
Dangerous Liaisons.
Correct. Her actual favorite movie is...
Weekend at Bernie's.
Correct. In what part of her body did Monica get a pencil stuck at age 14?
Oh!
You know! Her ear! All right, Monica categorizes her towels. How many categories are there?
Everyday use, fancy, guest, fancy guest.
2 seconds. 11? 11, unbelievable. 11 is correct. Yes! All right, that's 4 for the guys. Ladies, you're up.
All right, come on.
30 seconds on the clock. 5 correct questions wins the game. The lightning round begins now. What is Joey's favorite food?
Sandwiches.
Correct. Chandler was how old when he first touched a girl's breast?
14?
No, 19.
Thanks, man.
Joey had an imaginary childhood friend. His name was...
Maurice.
Correct. His profession was...
Oh, Space Cowboy.
Correct. What is Chandler Bing's job?
Oh, gosh. This has something to do with numbers and processing. Well, he carries a briefcase.
10 seconds. You need this or you lose the game.
It has something to do with transponding. Oh, he's a transponster. That's not even a word. No, I can get this. Oh, no.
And it is very, very funny, which, of course, his job is, Rachel guesses?
A transponster.
Correct.
That's not even a word.
Yep. All-time great moment in the show. So much so that when they did that HBO special, they had them sort of recreate it as like them doing trivia about the show with them, with the little whiteboard and everything. It was really cute.
But what's wild is how early in the show that is. Like that
like season 3.
Like that's the thing that like I find so fascinating about the show, because the early seasons are so strong and so well remembered. But it doesn't like have like a huge dip in quality. Like I feel like the plot threads, like they're reaching a little bit in the later seasons, but like there's no, it's not like a Simpsons scenario where it's like anything after season 7, blah, blah, blah. Like, or however you look at it. Like Friends, generally speaking, like keeps like good enough writing and then like good timing and delivery from everyone throughout the entirety of its run. And Chandler like does a really good job of like remaining that like comedic focus. Like I think that they start giving him like less developed lines at some points because they know that like Matthew Perry can handle just about anything they throw at him. But at the same time, like he's a strong character who from the earliest point, we get to see a lot of his job, even though we never actually find out what his job is. We get to see a lot of his relationships, like Janice, like, I mean, oh my God.
Oh, I miss you already. Can you believe this happened?
No. And yet it did. Goodbye, Janice.
Kiss me.
Oh, Chandler, sorry. Oh, Chandler, sorry. Hey, Janice. Hi, Monica.
Okay, well, this was very special.
Ray, You come see who's out here. What's going on? Oh, my God. Janice. Hi.
Janice is gonna go away now.
I'll be right back. Oh, Joey, look who it is.
Whoa.
Oh, good. Joey's home now.
This is so much fun. This is like a reunion in the hall.
Oh, hi, Ross. Yeah, there's someone I want you to say hi to. He just happened to call.
Hello, Ross. Yes, that's right. It's me. How did you know?
Like, we have to talk about Janice, who is basically doing the nanny, but as a annoying girlfriend character on the show.
Yeah, I mean, her real speaking voice is not that egregious, right. But yeah, she definitely amps it up for comedy there, and always fun to have her come back around into the show, even long after they're out of reasons for her to appear as like the worst girlfriend possible, but. By all accounts, seems like a very nice lady in real life.
Which is why, like, it kind of makes sense that ultimately they decide to have Chandler and Monica get together. Like, the fact that we see their relationships play out and, like, why all these ones are not, ultimately successful why all these ones are ultimately not successful relationships for them. And then to sort of see them get together, it's like, oh, yeah. And I feel like the writers probably were in the same boat on that one, where it's just like, oh, yeah, like Matthew Perry is this very handsome, funny, charming guy with a good job who lives across from, Courtney Cox, who is this beautiful like chef who they complete each other really well. Literally, like Monica is going to complete, Chandler's sandwiches. Like they are fantastic, like fits for each other, and they occupied the same role just on the different sides of the gender spectrum in the show. So when the show is deciding to move on from Ross and Rachel as like the main relationship, like all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, let's put these two together because they make sense together. They fit so well.
Oh my God.
Chandler, in all my life, I never thought I would be so lucky. Is to fall in love with my best. My best. There's a reason why girls don't do this.
Okay. I'll do it. I thought. I can do this. I thought that it mattered what I said or where I said it. Then I realized the only thing that matters is that you make me happier than I ever thought I could be. And if you let me, I will spend the rest of my life trying to make you feel the same way. Monica, will you marry me?
Yes.
And I'm glad they had the sense to not break them up, because they could have thought like, hey, we're in season 8. We got to do something to change the dynamic. Let's crowbar in a reason for this to fail. There's places where there's tension in the relationship, but never anything like, where they just completely destroy it. And that becomes a really strong part of the show. And some of the most, I think, emotionally satisfying moments of the show are like, when he proposes to her, or the reveal when they're under the sheets with each other. Mm-hmm. Whatever. As we watch the one where everyone finds out, where poor Joey is tasked with trying to keep the secret of their relationship from everyone, and then has to keep more secrets from everyone as they start playing this game of chicken, where like Phoebe's like, I'm gonna come on to him, which will force him to divulge his relationship with Monica, yeah, like all of these bits with Chandler and Monica's relationship, I think they work the best because that relationship is the most organic. So I guess that's as good a time as any to move on to Phoebe. Phoebe Buffay, who is at least starts the show as a masseuse, and their kind of cartoonishly hippie bohemian friend, which she does remain.
Right. She senses energy, and she's also a musician, but her music stuff is like all like looking at the grotesqueness of the world, but from a beautiful perspective.
She's also comically terrible as a musician. I mean, that's part of it.
I made a man with eyes of coal and a smile so bewitching. How was I supposed to know that my mom was dead in the kitchen? La 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 la. Tiny and chubby and so sweet to touch. Soon they'll grow up and resent you so much. Now they're yelling at you and you don't know why. You cry and you cry and you cry. And you cry and you cry and you cry. Thanks, Ross.
Yeah, I'm paying you to stop.
Okay. I'm in the shower and I'm writing a song. Stop me if you've heard it. My skin is soapy and my hair is wet. And Tegrin spelled backward is Nurget.
Kudos to Lisa Kudrow for kind of like selling her as this like aspiring coffee shop thing. But the other thing they pepper in there, which is actually like fairly serious, and somehow they managed to get this in there without destroying the tone of the show, is her messed up life before meeting this group. Because every time they open a window into her family life or her past, like it's almost a joke that it's so horrible. Like, oh yeah, when I was 14, I was living on the street with this weird albino guy, and then he killed himself after my mother killed himself. And it's like, yeah, like that stuff should all just be the most horrifying shit you've ever heard. And somehow they're able to ride this sitcom line where it doesn't like, kill the mood of the show.
Right. She's always this like, center of positive energy, and then like the joke is that she's like the hardest one of the group. Like you think that she's the goofball, and she is, but then it's also like, but she's probably the one who has a knife on her.
Which I've seen some shit, right? Yeah, she does, and like I like those moments because they do spend a lot of time trying to build her up. It's like basically I read crystals and tarot cards, kind of woo woo. Astrology shit, but then every once in a while, like when she does turn on the like I'm world weary and wise kind of stuff, like I said, I've seen some things, and so when she kind of turns it off, that stuff, the hippie stuff for a second, and goes like, let's get real, it's always really great and funny.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, she ends up being kind of a background character. Like, roughly, I would say that, like, Phoebe and Joey end up being, like, the least focused on characters in the group. And usually they're, like, additive to the plots that are around them rather than being, like, their own plots. But we do get, like, fun stories, like the pop culture quiz aspect of Lisa Kudrow playing a part on Mad About You simultaneously with playing a part on Friends, like in the first season, and then using that as a excuse to create a canon continuity between the two shows, where it is revealed that her character Ursula in Mad About You is the twin sister of Phoebe, which works because the delivery on the characters are similar enough that you could buy that they are it's not just played by the same actress, but actually like this, two sisters that have just like similar mannerisms.
Hi, Ursula. Hey. Okay, well, I know that we haven't talked in a long time, but, okay. Our mom is not our birth mom. This other lady is our birth mom. Right, okay, the one that lives in Montauk. You know her? No, I read about her in Mom's suicide note. There was a suicide note? Do you still have it? Hang on. I can't believe you didn't tell me there was a suicide note. Yeah, so how have you been doing? Shut up. Bye, Phoebe and Ursula. I'll miss you. P.S. Your mom lives in Montauk. You just wrote this. Well, it's pretty much the gist. Except for the poem. You read the poem, right? No. All right, hang on.
And that's like a fun vehicle that like continues to be explored throughout the run of the show.
Well, and Ursula is also kind of the evil twin,
right?
Sort of.
But she becomes more evil as the show goes on. Because she's always a space cadet, and more so than Phoebe is. And then it becomes worse. Like once Mad About You is no longer running, or at least Ursula is no longer a character on it, they allow for her to become like more and more like insidious over the run of the show.
Yeah, but they do give Phoebe a nice ending because she ends up with Paul Rudd at the end, which you can do a lot worse than Paul Rudd.
He's a giant man.
He's America's sweetheart.
Yep.
And a man who clearly made a deal with the devil and does not age.
No, he does not. When he popped up in the finale when I was watching, I was like, yeah, no, it's the same person.
Yeah. No, we were watching. So we did our recent episode on. Our audience will hear this episode next. Our favorite films of the aughts, and Anchorman came up, and I was pulling clips for the editing, and I was like, oh man, I was watching just the clip of him in Anchorman. I'm like, good God, this movie's 20 years old, and he still looks exactly the same. Creepy. I don't know how else to describe it. It's amazing. But anyway, yeah. So Phoebe is often, as you said, like the emotional support character, but I do like these episodes where they let her be a little more scheming, and like, you know, you can kind of see like she isn't just, you know, that she's not just a big teddy bear for the other characters, you know, when they need her. She can be a little sneaky and, you know, clever too.
Yeah, and I like when she's given plots to deal with, like the episode where she's like dating the two guys and is trying to decide which one to go with, and they each like keep revealing like one is sensitive, and then the other one who like she thought was the sensitive one has like a great body, and like they like are like going back and forth in terms of the like which guy is the better choice for her. Like those are really funny moments for the character. And like my only regret for Phoebe is that she is not able to be the A plot in episodes more often. She's very regularly the B plot or a supporting character in the A plot. Right.
And that's also true of the last character we have to talk about, which is Joey Tribbiani. But before we get into our discussion of Joey Tribbiani, we're first getting a visit from our friend, writer and stand-up comedian. You know him from our prior episodes on Final Fantasy VI and The Far Side, Garfield enthusiast Joey Clift.
Like a lot of people who grew up in the 90s, Friends was a big part of my life in, I would say, sort of like an ancillary way. I wasn't necessarily somebody who, you know, watched it in prime time. I caught a lot of reruns when it would, you know, air at like 5 p.m. after the local news or something like that. And I generally enjoyed the show, but, you know, I wouldn't necessarily say I was like a super fan. That said, I think that there is something very big that I owe the show Friends. And that is, my name is Joseph, but everybody calls me Joey. And as we know, there's a famous character named Joey Tribbiani on the show who often says, "How you doing?" And I think that for me, I took a lot of pride in there being a popular character named Joey on a TV show. I mean, I remember when I was just like a shy kid, you know, in, you know, junior high and high school, people walking up to me and saying like, "How you doing?" And me like, you know, smiling that I was getting some positive attention for being called Joey. And honestly, in a very real way, something that I think a lot of people who were born Joseph go through when they're trying to figure out what they're going to go by in their day-to-day life, whether that's, you know, Joe, Joey, Joseph, you know, I've heard some people go by Seph, S-E-P-H. Is, you know, basically the validation of other people of like what you should go by. So I remember like I've been called Joey since I was a young kid, and it's just something that I kept in my life, you know, through, you know, I mean, my entire life up until now. But I remember when I was like a tween, you know, 11, 12, 13 years old, getting a lot of pushback from like older folks in my life, you know, folks like, you know, uncles, aunts, you know, teachers at my like middle school and junior high, saying stuff like, "Oh, Joey's what like a kid, Joey's what like a kid is called. You should really go by like Joe or Joseph." and me, liking being called Joey, pushing back and saying like, no, please just call me Joey. I definitely have to credit the show Friends in that after that show blew up and got really popular, I heard that less and less just because there was somebody named Joey in the media who was not a kid. So, Friends, the series, it's good. It was like, it's a classic sitcom. I enjoyed it. I definitely, know all the in-jokes. And, every time I go to the Warner Brothers lot, where I think they shot Friends, I'm always excited to see the big Friends fountain. But I think what I really owe them is just having people lay off me as a kid wanting to be called Joey. So for that, Friends, I thank you so much. And a hearty how you doing to you.
I believe Matt LeBlanc was the last one of them cast, and very shortly before they started filming. Apparently it was very hard for them to find the right actor for this job, but I think Matt LeBlanc is great in this role.
Yeah.
He's so endearing. Yes, sometimes they push him a little too far, and he's a big dumb puppy dog.
I think of all the characters, he's the one that is the most Flanderized by midway through the show, and certainly by the end of the show. Flanderized is a reference to Simpsons' Ned Flanders, who by season 4 has become completely off the rails, hyper Christian, like Mr. Rogers, versus being more of a three-dimensional character earlier on. And I think that he is a more interesting individual character earlier in the show. And then they push him really hard into being this puppy dog, which makes it weird when they then try to make him the leading man for a stretch where they try to pair him up with Rachel.
That's the one big misstep in the show, I think, is for a while they have this idea of I don't know, maybe Joey and Rachel will be a thing instead of Ross and Rachel. And it's one, you invested way too much in Ross and Rachel by this point to have any, I'll buy that one of them ends up with somebody outside the group, but the idea that one of them ends up with someone else inside the group, that would be a very hard trick to pull off. And I don't think they did that. It's more about ultimately Joey just kind of feeling adrift and sort of seizing on Rachel's she's there. It does not work. It kind of goes out with a whimper instead of a bang, because he just kind of realized no, I guess this is wrong. So I'm going to just walk away from that. So it goes nowhere. It's very weird, but that's season 8. It's pretty far into the run. But otherwise, he doesn't have too many long-term relationships. It's kind of the bit, right? That he just sleeps with everybody. He can get any woman he wants. But I do love the stuff they do with him as a struggling actor. His agent, Estelle, is very funny to me.
So, you're not mad at me for getting fired and everything?
Joey, look at me. Look at me. Do I have lipstick on my teeth?
No. Can we get back to me?
Look, honey, people get fired left and right in this business. I already got you into audition for Another World.
All right. Cab driver number 2?
You're welcome.
But I was Dr. Drake Ramore. How can I go from being a neurosurgeon to driving a cab?
Things change. Roll with them.
But this is a 2-line part. It's like taking a step backwards. I'm not gonna do this.
Joey, I'm gonna tell you the same thing I told Al Minza and his pyramid of dogs. Take any job you can get and don't make on the floor.
Yeah, his brief touches of fame are really fun. When he's actually working on projects, those are great. And this is a very New York kind of vibe. I have lived in New York, been a 20-something wannabe actor, wannabe theater person, making most of his money waiting tables kind of situation. And if you're living in New York and you're in your 20s, you know a wannabe actor. That's just a situation that's going to be in that group, and he's such a strong representation of that. Yeah, it's just he fits. He checks a lot of boxes that they were missing in terms of representation of the common 20-something experience.
Yeah, and people who listen to the show know I did improv in LA for many years in my 20s. and 30s, and so I knew, I was performing every week. I knew a lot of people through that, some of whom did go on to have a measure of success. But man, the number of times I was, I said I was either in a weird show or asked, "Hey, you got to come see my friend's show. It's playing at this weird black box theater somewhere in LA you've never heard of," and sat through a lot of very weird plays. This hit, I didn't know it obviously at the time when I was watching Friends in high school, but when I was rewatching it later, I was like, oh, this feels very real. That like he's in this play. There's a great kind of run of the show where he's in this play and he has a relationship with this co-star that he hates, and then eventually they come to have a romantic thing going on. And the show, when you see snippets of the play they're in, seems very, Eugene O'Neill kind of, characters coming to terms with things, as that's what the play is about, as most plays are. But then they finally show like the end of it.
Listen, I gotta say goodbye, and I gotta say it quick because this is killing me. One thing you gotta know is that I will never forget you. But you got things you have to do now, and so do I. And so, I'm gonna get on this spaceship. And I'm gonna go to Blargon 7 in search of alternative fuels. But when I return, 200 years from now, you'll be long gone. But I won't have aged at all. So you tell your great-great-granddaughter to look me up. Because Adrian, baby, I'm gonna want to meet her.
Which is like, and now I have to go back to my home planet of Zargon. Right. And like a ladder comes down, and like fog machine kicks in and lasers, and that just made me laugh because it was just like, yes, this is exactly. I've seen this show or something like it. I've been in this show.
I've probably written this show.
It's very funny stuff. Or like his turn as Dr. Drake Ramore, of course, on Days of Our Lives, which is great.
Yeah, my one regret is that should have come a little bit later and then been. And I realized that like part of the goal was to have to have him like touch fame and then like have it be rejected. But it would have been a nice like elevation of the character. To have that be like his like the same way like Rachel becomes like ultimately working in fashion, because like some of these like soap opera stars like do that for like decades, and it would have been like a logical like in game for the character.
Well, I believe he and at some point even though they have his character fall down an elevator shaft because he pisses off the writers, I believe at some point they resurrect his character on Days of Our Lives. It comes back for him towards the end of the show.
Yeah, but I just mean like in terms of like the pacing of introducing it. Basically, this is my overall thesis is that the show ran a little too long, and it would have been nice to have a few more of the things that like happen in like season 4 to 6 range be things that happened at like the end of the show kind of range, so that you could just like have a much more natural without like some of the swings that are necessary for sitcom development to be story plots for them. That's all.
Yeah, but he's also like, for as much as they want to make him this, the meathead of the group, he's often not. Like he's often, he shows himself to be more emotionally intelligent than that, and again, like fiercely loyal, almost to a fault, and very very supportive of the other 5. Like he really will, kind of, he'd throw himself on a grenade for any of these people, and like you again, because of that, you just sort of. You're willing to tolerate all the other weird shit with him because he just kind of like, but this is his found family, and that means a lot to him.
Yeah, there's a running joke on the internet these days about the number of women that Joey sleeps with, and and the reason he's allowed to get away with it is because he's like a fairly like optimistic meathead, that's just sort of like, yeah, sex is cool. Yeah. And you're sort of like cool with like rolling with it, because otherwise it would be like terrifying.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's got James Bond kind of numbers, you know, in terms of sleeping around. But you know, when you walk up to a woman and you say, "How you doing?" It cannot be. It's a force that cannot be resisted, apparently. So.
Hey. So I was with Joshua for an hour today, and he has not asked me out. Just so frustrating.
Why don't you ask him out?
Oh, yeah, totally. That's such a turn on.
Doesn't seem desperate.
That's the turn on.
He just got a divorce, right? So he's probably really nervous around women, you know? Maybe you just need to make the first move.
Yeah, but I've never asked a guy out before.
You've never asked a guy out?
No, have you?
Thousands of times! That doesn't make me sound too good, does it?
I don't even know how I would go about it.
Oh, what I do is I look a woman up and down and I say, "Hey, how you doing?"
Oh, please.
"Hey, how you doing?"
You know what? I'm going to do that. I'm going to call him up, and I'm going to ask him out. I can do that. Ask him out. How you doing?
Yeah. And that's a line delivery that everyone knows is now an inside joke to Friends.
Yes, absolutely. So one of my favorite like versions of that was the posters for the Denis Villeneuve Dune movie.
Oh yeah, how you doing?
All over every face. Yeah, that made me laugh. First, we're going to take a quick break with another friend of the podcast. He is the host of the House of House cast, and he has been on our show before talking about Rugrats. Please welcome back Andrew Taven.
So the big thing I think about with Friends, the first time I saw it, I was on a plane trip, and it was, you know, one of those things before they let you select what movie or TV show you wanted to see. It was one of those ones where there were like a few different channels, and so one channel had like 4 sitcom episodes, and it was like an episode of Seinfeld, an episode of Friends, an episode of Frasier, I want to say, and one more, probably also NBC. And that was the first time I ever saw it because my parents, weirdly enough, did not let us watch Friends. We were allowed to watch The Simpsons, which I had a friend who could not watch The Simpsons but could watch Friends, which I guess that is probably just depending on what your parents personally watch. Anyway, so it was the first episode of Friends I saw, and I saw it like 6 times in a row because I just kept watching the 4 sitcom episodes they had on this international flight, and that was before I had met my now wife, but her family at the end of the night would always just watch Friends. Like, whatever they were watching, whatever they're doing, it was like, all right, for like the last kind of wind down hour or so of the evening, back when it was on TBS all the time, they'd put on TBS and watch Friends, and then at some point, you know, they got TV that could record stuff, and it, you know, they would just record all the episodes and just put them on. And so now that's kind of become our thing with Max, the one to watch, where, you know, we'll put on Friends in the background. And, you know, I think a lot of people are like, oh, it aged poorly. Oh, how did people ever watch this? Like, I think you hear people say that, but honestly, compared to the other stuff at the time, it aged better. I think it aged much better than, like, How I Met Your Mother. I think How I Met Your Mother, like, Friends has got some gay panic, but it's also got, like, some of the more normal gay characters, and obviously, you know, it's got some real problematic trans stuff, but again, I think, honestly, not even a quarter as bad as How I Met Your Mother, though, you know, obviously I'm not the one to pass final judgment on that. But it is interesting watching it so much over and over, because we'll get to the end and then we'll start it over, and which I call Simchat Friends, like Simchat Torah, where you're starting it over again. And, just the things I pick up on, the little character moments. Like, I love in the one episode where Ross is he wants to play bagpipes at Monica and Chandler's wedding. Spoilers. And he's like, come on, everybody, join in. And Phoebe starts singing along with him, trying to play bagpipes, trying to play Celebration on bagpipes. And goes, ee. You can see Jennifer Aniston losing it. Yeah, I know. Look, I'm not going to pretend that, like, that it's like Veep or whatever, that it's one of the best comedies of the last 2 decades. But there are some fun jokes in it. There are jokes I really like. And there's a lot of interesting stuff to look back on. Like, I always talk about the fact that to show that Joey is stupid and has bad taste and, like, lowbrow taste, he reads The Shining, which is so funny to me in modern day, because now you would just have a character read a book at all to show that they're, like, smart. Yeah, so, I mean, those are some thoughts about Friends. Hey, congratulations on making it to 100 episodes. And, the next 100, I bet, will be even better. That's a weird thing to say, because it could just imply that I didn't think the first 100 were good, but obviously I'm in those first 100, so how could I not think they were good? They're fantastic. And, keep at it. And I guess all I could say is I'll be there for you when the rain starts to pour.
So we've covered all 6 of them. We've covered a lot of kind of general plot lines of the show. Any other kind of, like, bits from the bits of plot, or we should talk about some side characters. Are there any other side characters you want to highlight? Because there's a lot of them. We've talked about Janice and Richard, Paul Rudd.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about Monica and Ross's parents.
Elliot Gould, and I forget the mom.
Just fantastic casting there.
By the way, if you want to feel old, David Schwimmer is now, I believe, older than Elliot Gould was when he first appeared on the show.
Yeah. Just processing how young they're supposed to be, because, like, they start the show with, like, I think Monica's 25 in the pilot, and so that means, like, they're 35 at the end of the run of the show,
Ish, yeah. Ross is older.
But even, well, Ross and Chandler are roommates then, so, like, it's like what, right. like the 2-year age difference between the two of them. Yeah,
something like that.
But yeah, oh man, it's the timeline there. I mean, I feel like we probably should mention some of the random characters that are out there, like Erica, the knocked up teen in the last season that Chandler and Monica get their children from.
That's Anna Faris, if I remember correctly.
Oh, wow. Can you believe you're only 3 weeks away? I know. You don't mind me touching your belly, do you?
No, I don't mind you touching my belly, but right now your hand's kind of blocking the part where the baby's gonna come out.
Hey! Hi, Erica. Welcome back to town. Wow, look how big you've gotten.
That's because I'm pregnant.
Right. No, I understand.
Oh, okay. I'm just always afraid that people think I'm just fat with big breasts.
No, I knew.
Okay, well, stop staring at them.
Well, she brought them up. I didn't realize you were coming back so soon.
Yeah, well, in a couple weeks I won't be able to travel.
Yeah, and I wanted her to get to know the doctors and get settled into the hotel.
Hotel? Why isn't she staying with you guys?
Well, because we're moving in a couple of days and it just didn't make sense.
Plus, hotels are fun. My room has this little fridge full of free snacks.
Erica, those things aren't free. In fact, they have one of the highest markups of any consumer product.
Ross, she's giving us her baby. She can eat you if she wants.
There's a lot of the pleasures of watching any sitcom from the 90s or far back is seeing all the before they were famous people drop in, and all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, you forget that, like, Reese Witherspoon is Rachel's younger sister.
Yeah, that's the other thing I was going to say. Like, Rachel, they had this joke about Rachel having, like, multiple sisters that were all, like, an excuse for different celebrity cameos.
Yes, I forget who the other sister was.
I forget as well, but yeah, it's 2. And then, like, like, Brad Pitt shows up because, like, of course he does.
Bruce Willis was in there for a couple episodes, I recall.
The show was so popular that, of course, there's going to be a bunch of people. And then there's like the side characters who are not necessarily big names, but just like are enduring, like Gunther, who is like.
Right. I was about to say characters like that. Gunther, who's there, who runs Central Perk and is like, I believe, has no lines or almost none the entire first season.
Yeah, like my understanding is that he was just like an extra that like all of a sudden became like too important. I think this might be me just like making something up, but I kind of vaguely remember him being like the one extra who like knew how to do coffee stuff, and all of a sudden that became like the way that he was just there for like everything that they needed because he actually knew how to do the stuff at the coffee shop. And then it just like expanded into this part about this like, you know, guy who just was like completely in love with Rachel and like a source of constant comedy in the show.
Yeah, he's very funny. Another R.I.P. by the way. He passed away not that long ago. Yeah, but yeah, very funny. They have this. He's got this great kind of deadpan delivery, and the joke with him is that he has this unrequited crush on Rachel that he has no chance in hell with her.
Too out there. Maybe you'd just like to get something to eat with me sometime. As my lover.
Hi.
Hi. All right, let's go shopping.
You know, before we go, there's something I need to say.
Oh, okay.
I've kind of had this crush on you. But since you're with Ross, I didn't do anything about it. But now that you're not, I'd really like to ask you out sometime. So that's what I'm doing now.
Wow.
I dropped a cup.
And yeah, just the way he kind of is. He's a little bit of a creep, but in a way that is funny.
Yeah.
Who else drops by the old studio there in NBC? Let me think, because there's a lot. Like over the course of the show, there's a lot of these characters that kind of sometimes they like Fun Bobby you mentioned earlier on. That's like one episode of like, which is a kind of a sad commentary that this guy he's the life of the party when he's drinking, and when he's not so much.
Yep. No, he's he depresses Monica to the point. I feel like he actually has like a second appearance like before that, but. Because it's like, oh, Fun Bobby's back. But that's the thing. We'll go insane if we're trying to like figure out like everyone who had like a 1 to 3 episode run on the show. Because, I mean, there's so many people. We should talk about a particular thing that had a fairly long run on the show, which is Marcel, the monkey. And also probably we should lump in the chick and the duck.
Yeah, this was always weird to me that like the animal friends, especially Marcel, because like I'm glad they ditched that. In my head, it went on forever and ever and ever. Thankfully, I believe it's done by like the end of the second season or something. They got rid of Marcel.
Right. And that's like a cameo with him at the end of the second where he's like a TV monkey or something like that. It's a very short thing, actually, but it's there early on. I think the deal was David Schwimmer like got bitten by Marcel or something like that. And like it was just like, nope, can't keep doing this. But yeah, like they had this monkey friend in the first and second season of the show, and then there was this recurring thing about Chandler and Joey having like this chick and this duck living inside their house, and I enjoy it because there is an element of realism of like, yeah, sometimes you just have a friend who has a weird fucking pet.
Yeah, but from a practical standpoint, like they're untrainable animals, so not great for pets, but also like this like. There's no way Joey is doing these kinds of numbers in terms of sexual conquest if you're bringing a date home to an apartment that's full of shit. Like, I mean, because they just shit everywhere. Like that's all they do. We have a pool in our backyard, and like we had to buy a inflatable alligator to scare them away. It seemed to work for a time, but like they're just gross animals. So. Let's talk a little about the song because I think we've covered a lot of the show. We should, I guess, talk about the ending before we move on to the song, which is that ultimately, of course, Ross and Rachel get back together so they can combine their disparate children and kind of complete that arc. And Monica and Chandler move out of the city to the suburbs. And this felt really authentic to me. And like, again, like I'm still friends with all these folks that I was real tight with in my improv group from my 20s and 30s. But, we moved from LA down to Orange County, and I don't see them as often as I used to. And like that, there's just something about, you grow older and those connections remain as tight as they ever were, but you just don't see those people as often anymore. And you're not hanging out at the coffee shop like you always did. Like it's an interesting time in your life to look back and go, oh, I'm now on the far side of that part of my life.
Yeah, like we're also living in suburbia, and it's just like, oh right, like remember when you were like down the street from like a bunch of like your really close friends were actually roommates with them, and like you would, I think fondly on the times where it was just like, oh yeah, me and my roommate, like we just sat down and played a video game for the entirety of a day, and like I can't even imagine like that sort of existence anymore.
No, it's not possible now. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a satisfying ending to the show. I like that they gave Chandler a funny final line to go out on.
So I guess this is it.
Yeah. I guess so.
This is harder than I thought it would be.
Oh, it's gonna be okay. Okay.
Well, do you guys have to go to the new house right away, or do you have some time? We got some time. Okay, should we get some coffee?
Sure. Where?
They finally moved out of this big purple apartment that they've been living in. He says, someone suggests, well, we should go get a cup of coffee. And Chandler says, okay, where?
Right.
Yeah. Great.
Always giving him a great last line there. Yeah. Like the finale, I think is fine. There's a little bit of weirdness because like once the kids are born, like the twins, and speaking as a relatively new parent, like I could not stop focusing on the fact that like they just keep leaving the kids in the other room and like walking away and like doing stuff with no one watching these like two newborn and like 2-day-old newborn babies. Like the whole episode, I'm like, who's watching the kids? Who's watching the kids? What the hell are you doing? You had one bassinet. Like, what are you doing?
They're sleeping. Yeah, it's sitcom logic. They're sleeping in the other room. They're good. We can get about the business of situational comedy because they're asleep.
We could use a crowbar and a hammer to take apart a fucking foosball table.
They won't wake up. That's fine. But before we go any further, we have another friend of the show dropping by. You heard him previously on our episode on Animaniacs, my brother-in-law, Amir Baum.
For my nostalgia when it comes to Friends, it's actually very interesting because when I was in college, that was the last 2 years of the show, and it was a tradition when I lived in the dorms my first 2 years to watch the show with my dorm mates and experience all of the emotions and experience all of the characters of the shows we're going through. And I remember vividly watching the series finale in Arroyo Vista, my second year of college at UC Irvine, and feeling so connected with the feeling of an end of an era and all the emotions the characters were going through at that time, because just 2 short years earlier, I had finished high school and ended an era and started a new one going to college, and with so many unknowns and so many endless possibilities. And I felt like the series finale felt like that. Like you're leaving something that you're so comfortable with and going out there to a new world, a new era for yourself. So that was definitely one of the biggest things for me that is my nostalgic memories of the show, just watching it with my college dorm mates and us relating to the moments and the craziest moments, the tears, the conflict and everything in between of the show. And then one of the key moments on the show that I think I always really related to was the holiday episodes, especially the turkey one. Me and my family, when it's the turkey's on Joey's head, because growing up we would watch a lot of slapstick, and one of them is Mr. Bean, and there was a similar episode where the turkey's in his head, and I couldn't stop laughing. So that's probably one of my top favorite episodes, the holiday ones, especially Thanksgiving, with the turkey on Joey's head. Still makes me laugh thinking about that. And personally, one of the characters I related to the most is definitely Ross, because he was always the one who felt like the outsider and was the last to know about everything. And I was always the last to know about everything in my life. I felt like all the struggles he was going through, all the ups and downs, mirrors like my life in many ways. And that's really why the show always holds such a dear place in my heart, and why I always have such a nostalgia for it, and will always be.
Yeah, I think it's as satisfying as an ending as you could hope for a show like this. You know, they bring around their biggest character arcs to a close, and but everybody is, they're happy, and we know that they're all still going to remain friends after this is over, as they did in real life. Although I found it really kind of sad to find out in that special that that was the only time that this reunion they did on HBO, where all 6 of them had actually been in the same place at the same time since the finale of the show. And then, of course, now they never can be again without Matthew Perry, which is that there's something very just sad about that to me. Like, you would think, they should.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that it's difficult to get like your big groups of friends together. Like I had a theater company in like post college, like when I was living in New York, and we have a text thread that we check in every 6 months, where we'll all be messaging with each other. And it's I can't think of the last time that legitimately all of us were at the same spot, aside from a wedding. It's so rare to get groups of friends together.
Yeah, there is something kind of magical about. I would encourage people, even if you're not a big fan of Friends itself, watching these 6 actors talk to each other, the human beings behind the show in that special. It's really interesting to watch these guys talk about this phenomenon that they were a part of, and what it felt like to be at ground zero while it was happening. It's just really an interesting watch. So I would encourage people to check that out if they haven't. But yeah, let's talk about the song, because this came up. We did an episode on our favorite TV songs. Of course, this song was mentioned because it's an all-timer.
It's so catchy. It's such an earworm for just in general, but it's so catchy. And this is one of those areas where it certainly was part of the reason why Friends worked so well. And where you we compared it to Frasier and to Seinfeld, and Seinfeld doesn't really have a theme song. It has a jingle that it goes with, but it doesn't have
it has some music that plays while Jerry is doing stand up or whatever's happening at the beginning. Yeah.
Right. And so you can see that this is an area where the show just was really solid in a way that other shows were really solid at the time. But man, it's almost a lost art, to have just a theme song that you can sing along to.
Oh yeah, we talked about it on that episode, that it is a lost art. They don't do this anymore at all, almost never. And if they do, it's for a joke.
Yeah. And this is such a bop that goes so well with the I don't want to call it B-roll necessarily, but the footage that they shot just for the opening credits that is in the in the pilot, the only footage that they have. But then as the show runs, it becomes more and more clips from the show, and as a result, you get this scene of them dancing around this fountain and just hanging out, and it makes their season 1 looks very iconic, because you see them in every episode, images of them in this at 25, 27, this perfect symbol of their youth. And then the show just continues to run, and you see how they're growing and developing. But lyrics work really well. It's just it just is very smooth, and just like I said, it's an earworm.
Boy, howdy, is it an earworm. I mean, we talked about the other thing that we said on the TV theme song episode is well, how likely are you to hit that button that says skip intro And, you know, the less likely you are to hit that button, the better the song probably is. And like this thing had life as a radio hit outside of the show, you know, a full length version of it. You had the cast in the music video with the Rembrandts playing the song, alongside them jokingly. Like, I don't know if they actually were playing instruments or not, but you know, you got Joey sitting at the drum set or whatever is happening. But it becomes such a critical part of the identity of the show that like, I almost wonder, like, would the show have been as big a hit? I almost feel like it was one of those things that helped people find the show or tune into it and go like, oh, this must be all right. This song's a bop, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I just don't know if it would have, I'm trying to imagine just any old, like, random piece of music, or if it had been just some short musical sting. Like, the show might have gotten popular, but there is something about that, like, I don't know, like you said, the lyrics that are all about the theme of the show, this, you know, friendship and togetherness theme, and the kind of that feeling of being lost in your 20s and not knowing how, you know, how life is going to go. It pairs so well. And then they use that kind of jangly, almost REM kind of sound for all of their interstitial music as well. Like it really informs the identity of the show.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like it sets like a general theme for every episode, just by virtue of, like you said, the interstitial music, and like, it's so strong. And like, I don't know. It's hard to really say like, what is the value of a strong theme song, but like, it's there. Like I did not skip it a single time while I was watching, like in preparation for this episode. Like, it is super, you know, it gets in there and you get excited, you get jazzed, and like you get excited to watch the show you're about to see. And then like you said with the interstitials, like it continues to like be a thing that you're reminded of throughout every episode.
Yeah. And this is an era of kind of music. Maybe it's because, you know, like I said, I was a teenager in the 90s, and so listening to music was really important in forming my identity. But like, I really love kind of 90s alternative, this sound, this kind of, again, like early 90s REM or Counting Crows, and like these Gin Blossoms, like bands that kind of sound like this at this time. There was sort of they were fun and catchy, but there was an authenticity to them in the way that, say, like 80s butt rock would not have been. And so there's kind of a heart to it. And so to me, this music just sounds like youth and, you know, and friendship to me. Maybe again, if I had grown up in a different era, I would be thinking of a different style, but there's something about that, just that general sound that speaks to me.
I think it does a good job of like having that, like that, again, that like 20 something vibe that the show is especially going for in its like early concept.
Yeah. I mean, as a teenager watching it, like this is my sense of like, oh, I guess this is what it's like to be in your 20s, right? To be finding your way. Well, before we kind of start bringing things to a close, I was going to ask you this, which is which one is your favorite and which one are you? Because those are two different things.
Oh, Christ. Okay. So which one is my favorite of the characters in the show? Like, I'm going to default to Chandler just because like he is a big, like you referenced your friend who sort of like developed his like comedic timing based on Chandler. And I would argue that I probably did to a certain degree as well. I think all six of them have like really good comedic timing, and like, in their own ways were all the funny one, but like Chandler was so ubiquitous at the time. Like, the method of delivery, is so strong. And like, you know, he ends up being the one who like is the most stable human being in the group. Like, he becomes the everyman where before, like, the joke is that like no one knows what his job is, which is very true of like, I can't tell you of how many friends of mine I have no idea what they actually did for a living in the time that I knew them, or even still know them, to being like this main character. And like, yeah, I like him a lot. He's the one that the audiences gravitated towards, and I am audience. Now, in terms of who I am, I am probably some mix of all three of the guys, but probably the most between Chandler and Ross. Like, I am a giant nerd, like, but I'm also like a bit of a showman in terms of like, I'm a podcaster, and like, I like talking, and like, I don't know, people say that I can say things in a funny way. So like those are areas where like I feel more akin to Chandler, who is like, again, the one who I probably would like say is the my favorite of them, but I'm also then like the big nerd who will go on long tirades about like some subject that is extremely dry for anyone who's not in the know, and like have them like kind of fall asleep on me. So like both is true. And I don't know. I mean, like, I think we all have like our puppy dog moments, like Joey. Each one of them is supposed to be like an archetypal type of person. And it's I don't think it's weird to be sort of like a bit of a mix, but yeah, I guess I'm trying not to answer your question is the end point there.
No, as you were talking, I was like, oh, I guess we are kind of kindred spirits here, because I think, yeah, like in my head, I'm like, well, I'm Chandler, I'm the funny guy, right? I'm the hilarious one. And then in my head, I'm like, no, I'm more Ross than that. Especially in high school, when it was like, was I the funny showman, doing theater and stuff? Yeah, but I was also the nerd with the big crush I couldn't do anything about. Like, that was much more defining of my personality at 15. When I was watching this show, I was going like, yep, big into science, check. Unrequited love, check. Not quite fitting in with the rest of the group, check. So I definitely found, like, I was like, I want to be Chandler more, but I'm definitely, I can't not see myself in this other character. So yeah, similar kind of thing. So now we're kind of here at the end, I guess, but let's, any other like highlights from the famous moments or things you want to mention before we move into the final summation?
Yeah, so we had like a couple of episodes we looked at just to like discuss, and like I don't need us to like go into those episodes now, because if we haven't gone too much into detail, because
it's
whatever. But I do want to bring up that it is funny that two of the episodes I picked out, I didn't pick out on like, I picked out because of like where they fell and like what roughly was being discussed, and then realized once we started watching them that it was like super on brand, which is we looked at the one with the holiday armadillo and the one with the Halloween party, and in both of them someone dresses up as a member of the Superman family, and considering that I'm the host of a Superman podcast, I thought that was rather fun.
Yeah, I do like the holiday armadillo one. That one's pretty funny. That's a late stage one, but again, it's about David Schwimmer trying to get his son interested in Hanukkah. He wants to dress up as something, but there's no costumes left at the costume shop because it's too close to Christmas. So he's stuck with the armadillo, which is just very funny to watch him and Monica. Like, he's trying to get her to like get on board with the improv tap dance he's doing to try and make this work for Ben. Pretty funny. I enjoy that one. And the Halloween party is another one where they go for like everybody's got a terrible costume, and Ross has, I think, probably the worst.
Right, the Spudnik, which I have so many friends who go so deep on a pun like that. I immediately related to that moment there. But in that one, Phoebe is dressed as Supergirl, which is incredibly appropriate casting for Lisa Kudrow. And then in the Holiday Armadillo one, Joey shows up at the very end after like both Santa Claus and the Holiday Armadillo have tried. He shows up dressed up as Superman. So those were those. I also want to bring up the one with the blackout, because I think that this is an element that is really cool about the show, which is that they tried to have shared continuity with the other like must-see TV like block. And so I believe it was Mad About You had the blackout that like starts the blackout, and then all the other shows of the same night had the blackout going on, except for Seinfeld, who refused to participate in any kind of crossovers because I'm going to go out and say it. They were too big for the britches right there. They should have just done a blackout episode, because that would have been cool.
Yeah, although I will say I can't picture any of these characters from other NBC sitcoms of the era crossing over into Seinfeld. I can picture the actors dropping in and playing a character, but like not as their famous characters. Like none of them belong in the world of Seinfeld, because Seinfeld is its own kind of like satirical cartoon world.
Yeah, the nihilism of Seinfeld would sort of make it not feel like appropriate, but they could have done a blackout episode is all I'm saying. Like it's such an easy like setup for like writing an episode that it's annoying that they didn't participate in it, just because it would have been cool for all of them to be on the same page with this like very basic kind of setup, because like we've all had a blackout in our life and like been in a blackout. It creates the really funny sequence of Chandler being stuck in the vestibule with the supermodel and trying to like not say it on the cell phone but say it to first Monica and then Joey. So it's a funny episode, but mostly it's just because of like the little bit of continuity that was set up between the different episodes. I thought, or different shows, I thought was kind of cool. We already mentioned it with the Ursula Phoebe thing, but just the idea that all the shows that NBC was putting out at the time were like in the shared universe was cool.
And it's like the 4th episode of the show, and I for me this was the episode where they really sort of started to lock into what the show would become. You know, they started to really, I think the characters are more solidified by this episode, and then having that narrative conceit of like so much of that episode is just Chandler stuck in this bank lobby for the entire run of it. I remember thinking at the time like, oh, this is really cool the way they've engineered that as a separate plot line, as almost this little 1-act play with just him.
Yeah.
So, but so here we are, kind of we're coming up on time, but Case, tell me your thoughts on why you think this show endures, because obviously it lasted for 10 seasons, and frankly will probably be, somebody's doing a rewatch of it right now. It'll be around forever.
Yeah. I think it's going to endure because it was a really strong example of the type of show that it was. And it's one that straddles 9/11, which creates like this interesting scenario of the first chunk of it being the pre 9/11, like a lot of the stress of the world wasn't really being felt, and then you get to see a show that has to like tackle like the heaviest of all issues and kind of pivot. So there's that. I like I said, I think it's a really strong entry about an ensemble cast that has really good delivery, to the point where like, yeah, a script might be like something that you could predict, but at the same time, you really enjoy these people. Like we looked at the one with the embryos, the contest episode, as the first one we said we had to look at in terms of episodes to like just refresh our memory on the show. And that entirely is based on the humor of knowing all the characters involved, because it's all about the quizzing of like all the things, all the trivia bits about each of these characters. And like it's as much fun for the audience to try to guess the answers to it as like the actual punchlines that they're like throwing in there. The show is remarkably reliant on you knowing who these characters are and what their shtick is in order to like sell the joke. And like it's just very good at doing that job. Like it's very good at having you like feel like you're hanging out with people and just vibing and sort of appreciating your time with them, because at the end of it all, they're your friends.
I was about to say, I think that is kind of what it is all about. Like in a way that like you called it a parasocial relationship, right? That these TV friends become your friends. I'm here to go visit my friends every Thursday night on NBC. This show requires you to have that level of projection, I think, a little more than most. Like, I like I said, I love Frasier and I like Seinfeld a lot. And I think Frasier does this to a degree, but because those characters are a little more, they're not in the bell curve of like human beings you might actually meet, right? They're kind of weirdos. So they're a little harder to relate to, whereas opposed to like, these are just 6 pretty regular people for the most part that you could know. And you build so much of the humor, as you said, about familiarity, right? It's all about you knowing who these characters are. They are like their deal, not just as like, a comedy machine piece that's like, oh, this is the character that does that one thing. If the only joke to say Monica was that, oh, she used to be fat or she's uptight, right, that wouldn't last. The show wouldn't last 10 seasons, or at least no one would care about it.
Right, but they all have layers. They all have more going on with their character than just like the one note joke, which is where it's like disappointing where like Joey becomes more of a one note joke like in the later part of the show. But still, overall, they do a remarkably good job of keeping them as 3-dimensional as they can for the majority of the run of the show.
Yeah, and one thing that was really clear, especially in watching that HBO special, is just how much these 6 people care about each other as humans, these actors.
Yeah.
And there is, like we sort of said at the beginning, there's this special chemistry between the 6 of them as people that comes through in the characters, that there's like a love there between this cast that you can sense as an audience that makes you really attached to them in a way that you might not necessarily have with other arguably better quote unquote shows. But that special ingredient is something that is, I think, really magic for this show. And as a piece that has a lot to say about you and the group of friends that become your found family in your 20s before your real family begins, and they kind of take you away from that. It's just that really special time in everyone's life that I think people can relate to. I mean, my kids are very young. They watched a few episodes when we were on vacation, and they liked it. They could sense there's there's fun to be had here.
Yeah.
These are fun people to be with.
Yeah, it's funny. We didn't talk about the tone very much, which is that it is actually fairly adult, but chaste enough that my parents felt okay having me watch it when I was like junior high age, generally speaking. So it is accessible to people of all ages, which is, I think, another strength of the work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, it's ultimately it's one of these shows that's just maybe it's sitcom comfort food, but I think it's at a higher level than that. The comfort isn't just comedy to placate my shattered nervous system. It's there's something more loving and just there's a warmth and an inviting nature to this show. It feels more like I'm not just marking time or chilling to watch it. It's I'm settling in to enjoy some time with these human beings that I've come to care about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really glad we sat down to talk about this. This is yet another fun discussion with you, Case, and again, just cool that I think we're doing this for the 100th episode. So
yeah,
thanks again for doing this. And so again, if people want to find Another Pass and Men of Steel, where do they go?
So, again, Another Pass, Men of Steel, my two podcasts, you can find them wherever you get podcasts, or if you're looking for the YouTube kind of side of things, look for Certain POV Media, which is the YouTube channel for my podcast network, and that is where the full episodes go up, as well as the videos that I put up related to Superman monologues, which are 5-minute discussions of why I think a character based on Superman is cool. So check those out. For socials, you can find me on most platforms at Case Aiken. You can find me on Instagram at Quetzalcoatl5, which is spelled Quetzalcoatl 5. Because I was super pretentious in high school and was really into mythology and also the Legion of Superheroes. And I'm holding on to that damn AIM screen name for my dear life. So you can find me on those platforms there. And that's the stuff I do. Go.
All right. So if you have feedback on this show, you can send it to any of our social media portals, which just go to the social media network of your choice, Facebook, X, or Twitter, Instagram, Threads, BlueSky, or TikTok, and look for Nostalgia Arcanum. You'll find it. Coming up next on the show we're going to start that retrospective on our favorite films of the aughts, and I think I'm going to put parts 1 and 2 back to back, assuming we record part 2 soon, because that takes a long time to edit, honestly. That'll be next. Most recently, our episodes going back before this was, Legend of Zelda franchise. We had Jaws before that, and I believe The Land Before Time right before that. So fun stuff there. Just big, huge thanks again from me for tuning in for 100 episodes of this thing that I can't believe I've been so fortunate to be able to do. And here's to another 100 after this, I hope. And thanks again, Case, for coming by. It was always a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, it's always so much fun having either being a guest on your show or having you on mine. It's just a great time chatting with you.
Yeah, anytime you like. So, all right, everyone. So, till next time, that is one more entry in the Nostalgium Arcanum.
Smelly cat, what are they feeding you? Everybody! Smelly cat, it's not your fault. Monica!
They won't take you to the vet.
Chandler!
Obviously not their favorite pet.
Joey!
May not be a bed of roses.
Rachel!
You're no friend to those with noses.
Ross, those are the only lines we have, sorry.
Okay. Back to the chorus, everybody. Smelly cat, what are they feeding you? Smelly cat, it's not your fault.
A smelly cat, what are they feeding you?
Okay. The test is ready. Each team will answer a set of trivia questions, okay? The categories are fears and pet peeves, ancient history, literature, and it's all relative.
Okay.
Now, the coin toss to see who goes first.
Okay.
Okay, somebody call it this time.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, here we go.
Okay. Heads!
Oh, it's tails, and the boys go first.
All right, okay.
Why did you pick
Okay.
heads? But why pick
Here we go.
heads?
Pick your category.
Ancient history.
All right. Rachel wrote Ross a letter and demanded he read it before they got back together. How many pages was that letter?
18 pages!
Damn.
18 pages.
Front and back!
Front and back is correct.
Oh my God, that's good.
This is the letter.
But who gets the points for that?
What?
Me.
All right.
Points for
Okay,
getting
guys,
the
you're
name
up.
right.
Literature.
Oh, that's a good choice, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Literature. According to Monica, how many erogenous zones are there on the female body?
7.
Courtney, is that correct?
That's correct. 7.